Jamie, you'll have to let us know if we can rent one. How's the learning curve?
I think it depends on what you rent. My favorite, and you'll hear and you'll see, my favorite is the Velvet 56 millimeter. And it's a real lens. It's versus an optic that is placed inside of the composer, which I'll talk about. But I have had people rent Lensbabies, a couple different rental companies. I don't know, Lens Rental. I think one person who rented a Lensbaby ended up buying it at a pretty good deal. So, and right now they're having Lensbaby is having a refurb sale, 70% off. So that can be
All right, yeah.
not quite as inexpensive as renting, but if you thought you would like a particular one, I think renting is a good idea just to get a sense of whether you like something or not, but it's possible.
Yeah.
You don't rent them from Lensbaby, but other
Yeah, we'll have to start checking with our camera stores in the area and see. All right, well, we're going to get started here. Thanks everybody for coming on a nice sunny Saturday morning. Instead of being outside enjoying the weather, you've come to visit us, and we've got a good program for you today, talking about Lensbabies. A couple of announcements. If you belong to a Wacko Camera Club, the Wacko competition is now open and ready for you to enter. We have added one new division, and that is creative altered reality. It's the same as what we had for the special division for last meeting, but now we're going to have this as a regular division. The only exception is it's not eligible for best of show until after we see how the trial works for a couple of months, and then we may make that permanent. So go check it out and enter the competition. The deadline is in October, but the competition's open, and it's on the Wacko website. We also got a couple of events going on next weekend, right, Ken? That's next weekend, right, for sunflowers?
It's Friday and Saturday.
Saturday, yeah.
At 8 a.m. at Lannon Sunflower Farm. So we sent out a notice to most of the camera clubs, and it's easy you can look them up on just look up on Google Lannon Sunflower Farm, and you should be able to get directions to it. It's this one is kind of like just a more or less a meetup where you're just paying the normal fees that the sunflower has, which is $20, which allows you to actually cut I think it's either 10 or 12 sunflowers and bring them back with you. And the one thing we did do though is we have special hours from them. Normally they don't open until 10. They're going to open at 8 o'clock in the morning for us on Friday and Saturday. So that'll give us 2 hours to use the grounds without other people there besides our camera club.
Great. So come on out, shoot some sunflowers, pick some sunflowers, have a nice morning either Friday or Saturday this next week. The other one to let everybody know is we do have the Birds of Prey photo shoot coming up on October 5th. That's a Sunday at Schlitz Audubon Society. So it's $75 for pre-registration and $100 for general entry. You can find all the information on the WACO website under programs. So check that out. It's a great way. There's, I believe it's 16 birds that will have out. They rotate like 5 or 6 birds every 40 minutes. And they got a couple eagles, a bunch of hawks, a bunch of owls. My favorite is the crow. They also have a vulture. So there's a lot of good birds. You're able to get up to 5 or 10 feet away from most of the birds, so you can get some really good close-up shots. And it's usually a fun day, and hopefully we have some nice fall color by then. So with that, anybody that wants to join the panel, please raise your Zoom hand. If you have any questions or comments, please put it in the Q&A if you can for us. And we'll get started here with Jamie is an award-winning outdoor nature photographer known for capturing beauty in flowers, still life, landscapes, and everyday scenes. Her work spans macro, abstract, intimate, and rural landscapes, utilizing techniques such as infrared, long exposures, ICM, multiple exposures, and Lensbaby. Based in Greenville, North Carolina, Jamie is a Lensbaby trailblazer and an experienced presenter for organizations such as NAPA and PPNSYS. She offers online and in-person workshops, including East Coast location sessions via New Life Photos. Jamie aims to educate and inspire photographers to develop their skills and find their unique vision. She's been on here multiple times now. She taught infrared in 23. January 24th, she actually talked about Lensbabies once before, and I thought it was a great time to bring her back, partially because I'm getting into flowers and things where Lensbaby tends to work, and I wanted to learn more, and I'm too lazy to do it any other way but have them come in person. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jamie, and she's going to tell us all about Lensbabies. Let me just find there's the replace spotlight. There she is. Okay. Thanks for coming, Jamie.
Well, thanks for the invitation. And for those of the members of the club who are out photographing instead of sitting here on Zoom, I don't blame you. And hope that you get a chance to watch later and learn something. And for all of you, if you have any questions about Lensbaby after this is over, feel free to contact me, email. I'm on Facebook and Instagram and available by email. And if we need to talk on phone, I'm happy to do that. But otherwise, yeah, I am a Lensbaby trailblazer. I've been photographing with Lensbaby for over 20 years, and I just love it. So with that, I will share my screen and share with you some reasons, I guess, why I love Lensbaby, but also, how you can become acquainted with Lensbaby and use it perhaps in your photography, not just for flowers. I do love, excuse me, I do love flowers. It's, my Calgon, for any of us who are old enough to remember the commercials, Calgon, take me away. Flowers are my Calgon. So getting creative with Lensbaby. Let's see, how about if I get my button working? Okay, so just a quote that I really love from Galen Rowell. He says, at the heart of all photography is an urge to express our deepest personal feelings, to reveal our inner hidden selves, and to unlock the artist. And I think for me, once I started getting into photography, but in particular macro and close-up photography, and then started photographing with Lensbaby, I think that's really where I sort of found a groove. So, that's where I've been able to unlock my artist at the beginning, and then it just translates further. For anyone who's not familiar with Lensbaby, it was launched by Craig Strong in 2004 at WPPI. They were actually making more Lensbabies at that time in the hotel room and bringing them down because it just was such a hit and a unique way, I guess, to photograph people, which I don't do. And so that's where it started. And you can see kind of a progression of various options here. And I started with the Lensbaby 2.0, so that is 20 years. And I really got more excited once the Velvet 56 came out, and perhaps you'll see why. But people ask, well, what is Lensbaby and why would I want Lensbaby? Well, if you're an artsy fartsy kind of person like me, so I've been teased about, loving the quote woo woo. I'm not a documentary photographer. I don't see things most of the time in a literal way. So Lensbaby, each one of them has a different effect that you see through the lens. So they're creative effect lenses, optics and accessories that just really allow any photographer to see and capture ordinary subjects in a different way. They are all manual focus, so you've got to know that going in. Adjusting your diopter and turning on focus peaking if you have it is helpful there. And another thing that you might want to know is that when you're trying to figure out, well, what aperture did I use? You will never know unless you establish a pattern or your own pattern in terms of, I tend to shoot at 2.8 or 2 or whatever it is. I'm sort of a wider open kind of aperture girl anyway. And so when you look at your metadata in your computer, it says F nothing. So I have not a system for what aperture I've used, but you'll see as I go along, I have a system that when I use it works really well to tell me what Lensbaby did I use. The aperture for me is not important because I'm looking through the viewfinder and I am finding my way visually and creatively to the point that the image looks the way I want it to look. You do get the ISO and the shutter speed, so you do have a little bit of help there. But if you have more than one Lensbaby, like I do, I have a lot, having a system for which one you use can be very, very helpful. Anyway, that's sort of the thing. So this is the Lensbaby 2.0. And this is where I started. And so you'll see aperture rings down on the bottom. They were magnetic, so you dropped them in the center there, and that's how you chose your aperture. And how you made the image look the way you wanted it to look and not repeatable was by squeezing the Lensbaby or pushing it out or tilting it. So it was very fluid kind of thing, and not, like I said, not repeatable. This is an old overview of some of my Lensbabies. I have even more. I should put together another collection of them, but I have a ton of Lensbabies. I have favorites, and we'll talk about that as well. But this is where these two images are with the soft focus optic, which goes back to the beginning when they first came out, where you could pop in optics, they call them. They're lenses. They're unique lenses, but they're optics. And I just love the look that I was getting with the soft focus optic. And that's what I saw through the viewfinder. So that's the other cool thing about Lensbaby, is that you don't have to work really hard to see what does this image look like. Here is what the Lensbaby 2.0, which was my first Lensbaby. So you can see kind of the effect of the squeeze and the tilt and the push with these two images, one being a bee balm and the other being the side of a painted barn. You see the stretch. But what was interesting with the bee balm is that by doing that, it allowed me to remove the distraction of the bee balms that were behind the one in the image. So, you know, it had its place, and it had a really, it got me kind of going in a different direction, and I just kept going. So, but like I said, my first fall in love with Lensbaby was not the 2.0, it was the soft focus optic. And with the composer, and I'll talk about that too, but the composer is the holder. The optic is what sits inside and creates the different effects. But again, this is what I'm seeing through the viewfinder. And this was in film. So all of these, it's not what it looked like. And you can imagine that it's not what it looked like. Here's some Indian blanket. And I looked at this as like a family of flowers, but that's how it looked. It had this sort of dreamy, ethereal look. And then when I added macro filters, I could do even more and different things with it. What I learned the hard way was that, you know, the soft focus optic is not great for when you're in the Smokies, on the edge of a stream in Tremont, and across from the stream, a bear comes to the other side. You can see that little black mass underneath the bend of the tree. And yeah, so very quick story. That that's what I had on. I didn't have two cameras, so I had my camera, and I had the soft focus optic on, and I'm getting all creative and artsy fartsy, and I had other ladies with me, and I got a poke on the shoulder, and then a point across the stream, and I was like, oh boy, and there's a fisherman. So first of all, I could have, if there wasn't a fisherman downstream or upstream that we thought maybe he needed a warning, I would have been able to change to my telephoto lens and you know, get a whole different thing. But there was a fisherman in the water, and so we felt like it was more important to yell at him and get him out of the way, because when you're on a stream or by waterfalls and all of that, you know that you're not hearing anything. And so
Yeah.
we yelled, we pointed, he looked, he left, and we never saw him again. So we didn't even get a thank you for that. But, you know, now I have two cameras, and so, you know, maybe I would do this again, but maybe not, you know. Anyway, when I think of photography in general, I think of it as a balancing act. You know, on one side we have the technically correct, and on the other side we have, you know, our own creative vision. And they're most often they're not evenly matched, right? You lean one way or the other depending on what subject you're photographing. And I lean more toward the creative vision side. So I know what is technically correct and I make use of that, but I also leave the room on that when I'm photographing something that I have my own idea on how I want the image to look. That same scale for me is like, sometimes I'm not seeing anything. I'm uninspired and unmotivated. But when I put a Lensbaby on, and I have my favorites, but when I put a Lensbaby on, I see differently, and I'm then become a little bit more inspired and motivated. So again, I'm tilting towards one end of the scale, but I'm using the Lensbaby in those cases because I'm a little stuck with my normal lenses and not seeing anything that's, you know, exciting me. So it just makes me see differently, and it works for me. This here is an image taken with a Velvet 56, which is my favorite Lensbaby. I will just tell you that right off the bat. And I say perfection is broken, not only because there's no such thing as perfect, but because when when some friends and I were in this church and had one of the ladies knew how to play the organ. I was fascinated by the names of the keys and perfection in particular. And I said, "Oh, what does perfection sound like?" She pulled it and she said, "It's broken." So I'm like, that's perfect, because it is, we want technically everything and, all of that kind of good stuff, but perfect. Aiming for perfect is sort of sometimes self-defeating. So I look at perfection as an interesting goal, but I think that what I've termed that to is to do my best. And what someone once told me many moons ago was that, there's no such thing as perfect, but if you do your best, there's always room for incremental improvement. So I like that better. Anyway, broken window and shutters taken with the Velvet 28. I've listed in a lot of frames, not all of them, what Lensbaby I've used. I'm not going to talk about every image in that way, but just so that you have a sense of what you can do, because some of them are mixed. This I think might be the Velvet 28 also. That you can get 2 inches from your subject and shoot wide open and create just very different images. From a practical standpoint, in terms of using Lensbaby, I've already said it, let go of perfect. A lot of people have challenges with focus. Sometimes the focus problem is really because our eyes aren't as good as they were, like 20, 30 years ago. But in terms of getting a good focus on an edge that you might want, it's easier to do that if you start with your aperture set at f4, and then when you find it, change to wider apertures. And like anything else, you want to pay attention to your focus point and the edge so that you can get the look and feel that you want. When you're first starting, you may find that using a tripod helps you to just get a sense of how it works, whichever one you have, how it works, and then once you've got that down, like anything else, there are subjects that the tripod just is not going to let you get the vantage point, the perspective that is going to work for what your goal is. So tripod first may be helpful to learn, and then after that you can do either or, right, the hand holding for odd positions. But the idea, again, the tip really is to just keep playing. Like, don't start using it and then go, I'm just going to put this away because it's not working. Well, that's like anything. If we stop and give up, then we're never going to get the hang of whatever it is we're trying to do. So, perseverance and persistence pays off. And when you do, I love my flowers, and I also love dead, dying, aging, wabi-sabi flower. So this is one that's taking a bow, taken with probably one of the optics, maybe the suite. Whoops. I forgot about that blank thing. Anyway, you get to make up your own rules. You get to make up your own rules with photography anyway. If you're submitting images for competitions, well, then you've got to follow those rules. But, we want to, in general, look for key elements, the star of the show. We want to keep things relatively simple, so there's not so much stuff that we're crowding the game and making it hard to discern what your subject is and what your message might be to a viewer or to yourself. We like for our compositions to be interesting. And when you're using the composer or any of the Lensbabies that allow you to bend and tilt, a little bit goes a long way. If you go too far, you actually see the other edge of the optic. So you'll get like a dark vignette on one side, and that's the optic. Again, just like normal regular photography, if you can't focus, if the lens is not focusing, and it's not your eyes, you may be too close. If you have close-up accessories on, sometimes you're too far away. So just kind of moderate. Am I too close? Am I too far away? I remember one time my favorite macro lens, I raised it up to photograph a building because it was a telephoto macro, and it didn't focus. And like, oh my gosh, it's broken. Well, I had a macro filter on top of it, so it was never going to focus. So keep that in mind when you're photographing in general, but also with Lensbabies. It's not just for flowers, right? I photograph anything. And now if this like hurts your eyes, I understand, but it's a good wake up. This is down in White, Georgia, Old Car City, which is an amazing place to photograph if you've never been there. But this is photographed with the Sol 45, which has blades. You'll see this. And when you engage them, it does this kind of funky thing with the background. And in the middle, wherever you place the sweet spot, that is not going to have that effect. So Velvet 56. I tend to use my Lensbabies shallow depth of field. So my go-tos are anywhere from sometimes f4, but really I kind of live in the f2.8, f2, and f1.6 with the Velvet 56. But I live on the coast, near the coast, and so I love to photograph the boats and the nettings and things like that. And this is also with the Velvet 56. So selective focus is really easy to do. This here, I may have added a macro filter on the front of the Velvet, but I may not have. I can get pretty close and you see what's in focus and what's not. This is shooting down in an antique store. This is the top of an antique paper umbrella. So you can photograph just about anything. This is in Old Car City using the optic, the Sweet 80. And when you hear a number, 25, 35, 50, 80, they're focal lengths. So you're talking about the focal length and the angle of view, how wide or narrow the range is. The look, as you can see just from those first initial images, it's untraditional, not for someone who says, I love things tack sharp and everything needs to be just so. It's not really for that type of shooter. So you've got to have a little bit of an open mind when you're using Lensbaby and know that it's not gonna look the way, if you compare the macro lens versus, any one of the Lensbabies, they're not going to have the same look or feel. The unique bokeh that each one of them offers is unique to the particular whether it's the velvets, the sweets, the edges, etc. They're all unique. And with the Composer Pro, which is the holder, remember, all of your sweet spots or sweet edges are movable. So that's kind of fun. This is just a rundown of the basic categories of the effects. So the sweet spots, an edge or slice of focus is the next one. There's the twist and the burnside, and the trio, which is a very small all-in-one type of Lensbaby. I don't have that one. I don't want it. I like all of the ones that I have, and I don't need that because I have everything that's in the trio. But the swirl is just a swirly bokeh. You'll see that. The velvet is an overall glow. And then, of course, you've seen an example of the early soft focus optic. Well, in their newer optics, what they've done is they've added, you don't have to drop in aperture rings. You actually can choose an aperture just by turning the dial. So it's a different, more artistic look. It makes you manually focus. It makes you slow down. It makes you work harder for that edge of focus. And it just moves you from literal to interpretive. And the cool thing is that with most of the Lensbabies, not all of them, at least in my experience, if you want a sharp, you don't want any effect, particularly with the velvets, you just set your aperture to f8 or above, and you've got a sharp prime. So that's kind of a good way of having flexibility in that regard. All of these are just side effects of using Lensbabies beyond, you know, any kind of mechanical or technical bonus or benefit that you might see. The other thing that I really love is that for the most part, if I did a super job, I shoot in RAW, but if I did a super job photographing, I have to bare minimum on post-processing. So that's another benefit for me, is that when I get it right in the field, I don't have to do a whole lot. And here's an example. This is Fleabane, I believe, is the name of the flower. I'm using the Sweet 35 with macro filters added, which I do very often. This is no edits. So what I did is I just opened it up and then I saved it, and that's no edits. Now, if I look at it, you know, I like the exposure, that's working well. I may go in and do a little bit of, you know, sharpening, maybe here, maybe not. I may, you know, modify somewhat, but this is the idea of how when I'm looking through the viewfinder, I don't necessarily go, oh, well, I need to do this and this and this, and I'll quote, fix it in Photoshop, I'll crop it later, you know, all of the phrases that just, sorry, but they annoy the dog out of me, because that, I feel like that's allowing yourself to shoot sloppy. And I remember when I first started digital, I had to catch myself and push myself back into the slide shooting mentality, because it was very easy to say that, you know, I'll fix it later, and all of that. So off the soapbox. Camera settings for Lensbaby. Yeah, I have a few soapboxes. That's one of them. Manual or aperture priority works the best. You can, my preference is aperture priority. The camera chooses the aperture, you know that, and it just gives you, or me, a much simpler starting point. If I'm shooting in manual with the Lensbabies, and I'm talking about manual exposure, not manual focusing. When I'm shooting in manual mode, I find that my flow is not nearly as fluid. So aperture priority is what I choose. Because I've been doing it a long time, I don't necessarily always start at f4, but it's a good place to start. And if I start there, I'm usually adjusting to a wider aperture. With the composer and all the optics, the Soul and the Sweet 22, which is another standalone lens. Again, if you start with the optic with those straight ahead, that's a good way to get a sense of what it looks like and how it feels. And once you kind of say, okay, I got it, then you can twist and tilt and do all that other stuff. So how do I know what optic or lens I use? Well, a friend of mine would photograph the top of the optic holder. And I thought, well, that's a good idea. But then I had velvets, I had sweets, I had, you know, I had just a bunch of things. I actually need more sticks, okay, because I have more than what's in here. But it's a good system when I use it, because what I know is that when I'm photographing, let's see, oh, I put the Velvet 85 on, and then I photograph Velvet 85 stick. Everything that follows that stick is the 85. The key is that if I switch to a different one, other than a regular lens, which obviously you don't have to worry about it because the metadata is all there. If I switch, I need to photograph a different stick. So that's the system that I have come up with that, for the most part, works when I use it. Okay. Consistency is key also. But I've talked a little bit about the focusing tips. So the Composer Pro, straight ahead before you start tilting and bending. Make sure that you're at the proper distance for focusing. And, you know, when you recompose, or if you want the sweet spot moved, that's when you start tilting and you might need to refocus. So, you know, it's all just focus, recompose, tilt, refocus. So here's the optic swap system. So what you see in the middle, and I'm assuming you see my mouse, but if you don't, what you see in the middle is the composer. That's the holder. All these other things on the left and the right, those are the optics. And there are more than these, but these fit in that holder. They lock in, and you can see on the second one, the Suite 35, that's the aperture settings. So that's how you change the aperture and depth of field and the look and feel. This is just a short list of the early optics, and you can see where I started. Again, my favorite was the soft focus. Some of them I didn't even use. Some I tried and said, no, I'm not really crazy about it. This is the current, let me see. Yeah, this is, yes. I think this is the most current list of all the optics. So if you were looking to try and you end up seeing something that you like, if you buy the Composer Pro 2, you could start with one optic that you like, and then you can buy others. You just add them, and they all, you only have to buy one composer. So that's kind of cool. And when I take the composer out in the field, I put it in my bag, and I just pick like one or two optics that I think I'm going to use that will work for a particular subject, and I leave the rest in the car or at home. So it just, for me, having the Composer Pro and all the optics that I do have gives me flexibility for a lot of different subjects. I actually beta tested the Soft Focus 2 optic, which I was really excited about because it was my early favorite. And so these are just some images from that Soft Focus 2. And this is an example of where you can use any lens and any optic to blur the background and create textures, you know, using different colors and stuff like that. So you can create textures, more of just selective focus and the more dreamy feel with the soft focus optic. All of these are with the current, so I can change the aperture. Here, clearly, this is a dandelion, and you typically are not going to get that big in the frame, but I added macro filters and laying on the ground, and that background is because of the soft focus optic. So that's one of the reasons why I love it, is that that's exactly what I saw when I looked through the viewfinder. They still have, I think, the Spark 2.0. That was not really one of my favorite because it was reminiscent of the squeeze box, right? The first Lensbaby squeeze that I had. But I liked this as a way of showing that, again, you can change optics with the Spark 2.0. And again, it's one of those not repeatable kind of things, but you can choose aperture and such. I love Edward Weston's quote, which really kind of connects to Lensbaby also, is when subject matter is forced to fit into preconceived patterns, there can be no freshness of vision. For me, I get fresh vision every time I look through a Lensbaby, even with subjects I photograph all the time. They do have accessories. So they have macro converters, which you'll see on the left-hand side, and they have macro filters. Normally, I don't recommend the macro filters, the +1, +2, +4, because they're not high quality, right? They're just pieces of glass that are, kind of domed. And that's where I started with macro filters until I realized that there are better options for lenses. But because Lensbaby has its own unique look anyway, we're not looking for tack sharp. We're not looking for everything to be, absolutely high-end perfect. And so I highly recommend, if you get any of the optics, if you decide to go that route, if you decide to go that route at all, get a set of them, because I use them all the time. I'm always wanting to get closer, and sometimes you just need to get a little bit closer. Very often I'm stacking all of them. So that's 6, that's +7. I also have an off-brand +10, because that's my tendency. We need to know what our tendency is. And my tendency is to use the macro filters versus the converters, not because the converters don't work, but because I like to take the close-up filters off and on. I like to interchange, and I don't want to keep taking everything off my camera in order to make it work. Some other accessories that I use just in general photography, but also with my Lensbabies, are the Canon 500D close-up lens. I have a series of Nikon 6Ts. Actually, there's a 5T in the picture in the center. The Raynox 150 and 250, which is on the right-hand side. All of those allow me to get closer, and they all have kind of a different, they're different animals, but they all work. And with the velvets, I do use a circular polarizer. I actually also have a 46mm circular polarizer for the optics that I sometimes use. Shiny flower, shiny leaves, shiny anything. The polarizer is going to work, and it will work on a Lensbaby as well. So just kind of a list of accessories that I find helpful in general, and when I'm using Lensbabies. It's sort of a universal list, actually. So the lenses, when I talk about Lensbaby lenses, they're independent, right? So you mount the lens on the camera. And so these are, the velvets are lenses. The Sol 22 and 45 is a lens. The Sweet 22 is also a lens. The Twist 60, that's an optic, and they also have, where it just mounts on the camera. The Obscura I haven't used. Shame on me for being a Lensbaby trailblazer and not using it. It's pinhole and Zoll plate, and if you hear me talking about my wide open aperture, you see the f/22, f/45, and f/90. It's not really my wheelhouse, or my go-to. So these are the velvets, and the focal lengths 28, 56, and 85. They are tanks. They are metal solid lenses. And you can see, you can go to f/22, f/16, f/22 with them. You see 16. The Velvet 28, you go f/22. But it's all about the glow. And the glow effect you find at f/4 and below, typically. If you go to f/5, 6, depending on your subject, you may or may not see a glow. And I didn't think I needed, need is a funny word, right? I didn't think I needed, and I didn't think I wanted the Velvet 28 until a friend of mine who had it said, do you want to try it? She spent my money instead of me spending hers. But the Velvet 28, the unique thing about it is that you can get 2 inches from your subject. So you can use it as a landscape wide angle lens, but you can also get really close to your subject. And as soon as this was the first image I made with the Velvet 28. It's a zinnia, you know how big or small they are. And there's no cropping, that's it. So But I've used it for other scenes, rural landscapes and such. And you see how this is kind of like, ooh, eerie, ethereal. Well, that's photographing at the wider apertures, probably f2, or whatever the widest aperture is for the 28. Dead fern, right? 2 inches from my subject. I was like, oh, this is really cool because I can walk down a trail and photograph stuff like this, but I can also photograph the trail. The photograph on the left is a purple gentian. And the nice thing about the Velvet 28 was that the 56 would not allow me to do is get this kind of environmental portrait and still be artistic about it. So for me, it's in my roller bag and not as much in my wrap around my waist bag, but it definitely has a place for me. The 56 is my go-to. That's 56 millimeters. Same principles apply. And I probably added a macro filter, right? You can get close, but I love always to get closer. But it's not just for flowers. And this is in a fish house, a stork fish house. Multiple exposure, handheld, using the hydrangea center on that one as the rotation point. So, you're not limited in what you do with these. This is just basically shooting straight on. Maybe I don't know, maybe I was at f4, but you can see kind of the rotation and the overall glow, but also the twist in the background. So depending on your subjects, that can happen. But I love the artistic interpretation of flowers more than I do the botanist view. So I love the velvets, and particularly the Velvet 56. A lot of people love for flowers, they love the 85. And the reason they love the 85 is for the narrower angle of view. You can see I got a lot of 56s. I just want to show you kind of different ways. Here, very shallow depth of field, slim edge of focus there. Could I see it? Yes, I could. Not very easily, but it's there. And but the 85 people love for the shallower, the shallower angle of view and also a little bit more reach. But here, just some examples of what you can do with the Velvet 56. It's a normal-ish lens if you use it at 5.6 and above. Go below and you get these different looks. Again, you see an edge of sharpness on the top here. I didn't have a whole lot of time to work this mushroom, but if I did, I would have I was scouting, and so I was on a time crunch. But my tendency, my style is a lot of times to go very shallow. And so that's why I love the Velvet 56. It's also smaller and doesn't add a whole lot of weight. Here are some examples of the 85. This done in my living room and adding a texture. These are outdoors. The one on the left, on the right, the fern, I added the Canon 500D to get even closer. Here, shame on me. You look at that leaf on the right-hand side. That's a polarizer. That's a reason to add a polarizer to that lens, which I didn't have on at the time. So shame on me. But these are Velvet 85s. And so that kind of gives you an overview of the velvet. So it's an overall glow on that. The sweets are more about the sweet spot surrounded by a soft focus blur. And they're different focal lengths. So 22 is a standalone lens that mounts on your camera. It looks like a pancake. very small. And then the others are the optics, the 35, 50, and 80. They fit in the composer. So I also got to beta test the Suite 22. And I'm sure you're shocked by now. I added macro filters. But the blur on the outside, you know, you can do that in Photoshop. You can do that in Nik Color Effects Pro, but that's the blur. So, you know, the other thing about the Suite 22 is I think the aperture is a constant f3.5. So it's one that you would know right away. Photographing in an antique store. You know, you can go to antique stores and they'll allow you to photograph. So you can come up with all kinds of interesting scenarios just by walking around with one of your lenses. This is very small. I think the nest itself is no bigger than a softball, and those eggs, they're long dried up. So this was done in my office, and I added the feather, but with the Suite 22. Macro filters added here. The Suite 35, here's an example of how you can photograph something and shift the sweet spot from the center to left, right, up, down, wherever. The background is created just simply by the nature of the fact that there were multiple colors, and that's the blur that was given. So I didn't add anything there. That's the look. But I wanted the center of that one, that peony, to be over to the left. And this is ranunculus I did inside my living room. Again, if they're really close, I've added macro filters, 1, 2, or all 3 of them. Probably did here, but it just, I love the look and feel. That's why I have a whole slew of them. But here's the Suite 35. This is out shifting the sharp area. Another example of how you can kind of do blur on different colors and subjects, busy ones especially, and create backdrops, textures. Suite 50, so 50 millimeters, right? So just a different angle of view. That might make you a little dizzy too, but it's also a good example of where sometimes it's not this is not the right choice. You know, I think a better choice for this scene probably would have been a velvet or something that didn't give that look on, especially on the top. Suite 50, adding the macro filters. These are calla lilies. Those colors in the back are just colors that are picked up from my back patio. I didn't add anything in the background. I just let it kind of fly and see what happened. You know, just creating all different interpretations. This is just shooting through weeds, and the sun is coming in from the other side, so backlit weeds. They would not look like that if you tried to photograph them with a macro lens. So, and when I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, yeah, I couldn't do that with my macro lens. One of these days, I should have a macro lens and a Suite anything to give you an idea. The Suite 80, longer focal length. Here's the Suite 80 on the left. That's using a small aperture, and there's still blur and effect down around the edges, and then wide open. So same subject on a tripod to give you an idea of, you know, where you can go with the suites. Because it's a center sweet spot and blur around the outside, it's not the same as if you want a tripod with the velvets, for example. Suite 80, and then adding a texture in topaz. So here again, the Suite 80, just different apertures, right? Different look. Adding macro filters. So to me, that it gives you a lot of flexibility. The edges are all about slices of focus. I'm not the biggest fan or fanatic about the edges, but I've pushed myself so that I have actual images that I've done that I'm a little bit more happy with. But there's slices or edges of focus, and some people love the edges. It's not my most favorite. But you can see, you know, a slice of focus here on this little garden character, and then soft blur and bokeh on either side. So these two are examples of early edges for me. And it gives you an example of the type of subject that maybe you could use it on. But I'll just be perfectly honest, they're not my favorite and they're not my best. I got better when I forced myself to go to a neighboring town and just put the Edge 80 on. And so this is a better example for me and a better image for me. You know, I had a subject that lent itself to a slice of focus. Same thing here. It lent itself to a slice of focus. And so on the left, you see it's more on the sign in the middle, and then on the right, it's a little bit more toward the beginning of the sign. Here on the building, here on the stained glass part of the window. My friend Mary Doherty gave me permission. This is like what I look at her image here and I go, yeah, would that I would be in front of something like this where I knew that's an Edge 80 shot, you know, or an Edge anything. But that just gives you kind of an idea of what the edge might look like for you. So if you photograph architecture and buildings and you're looking for a different approach to it, that might be something. Or just straight edgy plants and books, edges of books and papers and things like that. The twist is all about swirly bokeh. So kind of what you've seen in that one image from the Velvet 56. That's what it's meant to mimic the vintage Petzval lenses. And so they have a straight ahead. That's when I said, well, it's a lens, which is this, that mounts on your camera. There's no tilting or twisting or any of that. Or you get it like this, which is how I have it and how I would prefer it. And then you have a little bit of flexibility in terms of where your center is. This is the look, right? And so these are some images where if you have a busy background, you're going to see the swirl more than if it's not busy, right? So bright lights, just a lot of things, contrasting elements in the background is where you're going to see more of that swirly bokeh. So for example, on the left with the Spanish bluebells, there were a lot more of the bluebells in the back. So you see the swirl, and I could see it through the viewfinder. I walked over to the columbine, which was it's more of a loose growing. So the flowers are spread out a lot. You don't see that effect as much. Very, very, very subtle, even with the same aperture choice. So you're not always going to see the same effect with any of the lenses you use. This is the twist also, but because I added macro filters and there's not as much in the background, you don't see as much of that swirly effect. Here, I'm photographing ranunculus, and again, there's not a whole lot of contrasting stuff. There's not a whole lot of stuff going on in the background, and even less so here. But because that was what I was using for the morning, I'm going to use it to my best effect. And what I really wanted was that center of the ranunculus sharp. I could care less about whether there's swirly bokeh in the background, right? I want that center to be lit up like a flower tree. Okay. The Sol 22 and 45, the only difference between them is the focal length. The 45 is meant for a full frame. The Sol 22 is meant for crop sensor and perhaps your micro four thirds. What it will give you is either a soft and creamy background or a textured background. The texture comes from these aperture blades. By the way, do you see my mouse?
Yes, yes.
Oh,
we do.
good. Good. So these
It's
blades,
real small and orange, but yeah, we see it.
okay. So these blades, you can spread them out and then they're not there. Or you can just engage one or the other or both. Or the other thing is that it rotates. So if you want your pattern in the background to be moving in a different direction, you can just stick your finger in there and rotate it. So that's kind of fun. So here's without the blades engaged. And here it is with the blades, right? So I'm still looking to, and because I'm hand holding, the angle is different, but I'm still looking for that sharp center of the magnolia. I still want that. It's just a different look in your background, okay? Like it, don't like it. Sometimes it works really well, other times not so much. Here's an example without blades. So that's the sweet spot with the blur. That's both blades engaged. One on the left engaged. Here's another example of how you can, you could, I would say if I were to do this, use this for textures, I probably would do this and use multiple exposure. So in camera multiples and create an even more patterned look. The blades engaged. I still have a sharp center on this dahlia and everything that's happening behind is because of the blades. Not as obvious, just a different look. Multiple exposure using the Sol 45 handheld, rotating around the center of the lily down in South Carolina. So we're almost through with these. The Lensbaby Omni Creative Filter System. This is basically all or most of what is involved. So these little sticks, they're magnetic, so they stick to that little ring, and they have crystal wands, they have clear films, they have pattern films, colored, different colors. I don't use the holder very often. Sometimes I regret that because I only have two hands. But on left right challenge, so you see me. On the top right are all kinds of different things that you can hold and move in front of your lens. And depending on where you place them, what angle you place them, how far away, how close, different effects. And I'm going to be honest, I wasn't like a huge fan of the Omni because when I tried it at first, I did it all wrong. The all wrong part is that you set your aperture, because you can use this on any lens. It does not have to be a Lensbaby. It's separate and apart, so you can use it with or without the Lensbabies. The mistake I made initially was that I used a smaller aperture. You want to be using wider apertures, so f4, f2.8, f5.6 even. And you will find that you're not seeing edges of any of these things. You still have to watch out for them, but don't make that mistake, because I did, and then I didn't like it because I you know how you don't like something because you're not good at it. I put it away. I gave up. I did the exact thing that I told you don't do that. I did it. The Omni Neon, I beta tested this also, and I was like, what in the world? They're neon pieces of plastic that have whole openings in them. And it was pink neon, it was yellow neon, it was, I think, green neon. And I'm like, I'm not even a neon person. So like challenge me. And I do embrace challenges. And so I found some henbit and I used my Velvet 56 and I handheld this little Omni neon and I found an opening so that the henbit would show through and all of that other swirl and stuff. Again, I'm seeing through the viewfinder. And that's because of the openings and the gaps and the solid areas. Here's the green. I don't think that's a very good choice for my hellebore, but it gives you an idea of, what can happen. Here I'm using the Omni again, and I feel better about this. But I think what I was using here was more of a wand kind of thing, and not the neon with the holes. This here, I call it the mirror paddle, and it looks like a mirror. And on these two dead leaves in the woods and in my front yard, I held it, and this is where I just had to work at it. But I held the mirror in front of the lens until I saw a reflection of the dead curled leaf and a reflection of the leaf that was still hanging on the tree. So I found that to be fun. So some things you'll enjoy, other things you'll go, yeah, I don't like that, right? Like for me, the neon. I finally learned that how they came out with that is that they did have some clear ones. I thought, oh, well, they might be more fun. Here's an example of the Omni colored films. And again, I was pushing myself to embrace the Omni because I hadn't. And so I'm on a trail and all of a sudden this little kid comes and I'm like, dadgummit, you know how people walk in your frame and you're a little annoyed? But then I had the film up and it reminded me of a vintage old picture. And I thought, okay, this is not bad. He's kind of blurred and it looks kind of old timey. So, that's what I did. And so that's kind of the rundown of all of the Lensbaby. Hopefully all of the reasons maybe you can understand why I like certain things and for my style, why other things don't interpret well for me. These are all Lensbabies as well. The phrase I use, say longer, see more, it's true no matter where we are. The more we stay with a subject, the more we see, the more different things we notice. So I notice a lot of old women in hooded tops and long dresses. So this is a hellebore using one of the suites. Another hooded woman, very abstract idea, but more like a Halloween kind of hooded person, making fireworks, with one of my Lensbabies. Just that's ICM, just making use of low light and movement. And I love this quote too. So Erin Hansen says, there is freedom waiting for you on the breezes of the sky. And you ask, what if I fall? Oh, but my darling, what if you fly? Mm-hmm. And I think that's, that's a good message for any of us when we try something that is new, that we're not, don't really think we're getting it, but, we're going to mess up. All of our images are not going to be great. They never are, no matter how much we try. Show everybody all of your images. Do you want to? No, because they're not all good. But by trying, sometimes we fall and sometimes we fly. So if you're interested in Lensbaby, and you have more questions, by all means, feel free to contact me. I am a trailblazer, which means that I have an affiliate code. So WDAVIDSON on the screen if you want a screenshot. And Jeff, if you just want to share this information with the group. There's a link. If you use my link, I get credit regardless of whether there's an additional 10%. The refurb sale, 70% off already on a lot of their things. So you're not gonna get 80% off. But if you use my link, I get a little bonus at some point. But feel free to contact me at any time with any questions. If you want to tag me, if you get a Lensbaby, if you have a Lensbaby, I'm going to stop sharing. If you get or have a Lensbaby and you're happy with what you did and you want to tag me on Facebook or Instagram, by all means, I welcome that. I like to see what people are doing. And I just thank you for the invite and hope you learned something about Lensbaby.
Yeah, very interesting. Anybody have questions? Boy, this is a quiet group today.
It's okay. I ran through a lot of stuff.
Yep, you did. We had one in the Q&A, but then before I even asked it, you answered the question for her right away.
Well, good. Good.
So that worked out pretty well.
Yeah, I think the message really is that if you love everything tack sharp, and that was the message I got when I first started photography, this might not be for you. However, if you're looking to break out of that box, kind of crack the shell, it might be worth renting one of them, maybe the Velvet 56, again, my favorite. But that's a lens that you can get tack sharp, right? But you can also go off the deep end. So, it doesn't take too far out.
Have you ever used a tilt shift lens? And if so, is it the opposite of a Lensbaby?
I have not. Tilt shift lenses are they're their own breed as well, and they're great for people who photograph architecture and things like that, which I don't. And people who have tilt shift lenses, a lot of the people that I know have multiples, and so they have lots of money for those tilt shift lenses as well. The Composer, any of the lenses and optics that you can tilt, it's not about getting, everything kind of lined up and all of that. It's really about moving your sweet spot. So it's a different philosophy. You do tilt and you do shift, but you're never going to get that same effect of a tilt shift lens.
Any other questions? I did notice that I scanned the website looking at the Velvet 56, and it seems almost all of them right now are on back order. Is Lensbaby bringing out some new stuff?
Not that I'm aware of. I think it's like everyone, with their supply and demand.
Right.
So
because I also looked at Adorama and everything is close out, like they're not bringing, like it sounds like everything's renewing or something when I see that.
Well, I haven't heard anything about something new, but I'm hoping that they do bring out something new probably before the end of the year.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll have to keep an eye on it because I know I looked at the Velvet 56 and for my Nikon stuff, it's on back order or right now. So
try. Do you know Gary Farber with Hunt's Photo?
Yeah, I know Gary.
Yeah, Hunts may have it or
Okay.
Or B&H.
Yeah, I'll check around and we'll fool around with that.
Yeah, but also like you had Dreama, I think you were the one who asked about renting. See if you can rent one. And then
I'll have to see, and I have to check with our local. We're going to start trying to work more with our local camera stores, and we only have 2 left. So in the area,
that's a really good idea. I have a camera store here in Greenville where I live, and it's been around for well over 25 years. They have shifted their business model a little bit because people aren't coming in and buying cameras. So they do more video and printing and things like that. They do have some things, but they don't have nearly the level of photographic supplies as they used to.
Yeah, yeah. I used to be a camera store, God, 30 years ago. I ran one for 10 years, and with the age of digital and how fast stuff changes, it's so hard to keep a decent inventory, and then you don't want to be stuck holding old inventory when the new stuff comes out.
Yeah, now they do, they do a good used business too, so you never know.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
yeah, there's a company down in Georgia that sells KEH. They also have used.
yeah, I've sold a lot of stuff to them. So I've got a lot of sources that I'll go to and look at and see what I can find for it. And undoubtedly, Lensbaby too will get stuff back into stock soon enough.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, and thank you, Carol. Ron asked, have I used the Burnside 35 at all? Yes.
Yeah.
I don't show it because they're not carrying it. I have used the Burnside and haven't used it in a while, but it's an interesting lens because it does have kind of that swirl, but also a thing that you can push to create a vignette. So it's also a tank.
Yeah, Hubert, Steve.
Do you know any particular people that specialize in doing portraits with the Lensbaby?
Are there people? Portraits? Oh yeah, people. I'm not a people photographer, but yeah, if you go on their website, there are a number of, or even there's a if you're on social, there's Lensbaby USA, there's Lensbaby Unplugged, and there are a lot of people who photograph using use Lensbaby for portraits and things like that. So yeah.
I know Ann Belmont, which I'm sure you do too. So.
Yep. Yeah, she don't do people either.
Well, I'd be tempted with the Velvet 85 to do. We have a Renaissance fair that a group I'm working with is putting on beginning of September, and I would bet that would work really great for getting people shots. And isolating them.
Yes, and if you're good at manual focus and fast with people, right? If people are moving, you got to be fast with manual focus skills. But yeah, it would create a different look, and isolate for sure.
Yeah, because it's in a nature park, but we got a lot of cars and distracting stuff in the background. So you either got to do a lot of work in Photoshop or try to find some lenses that'll do the trick. So
that would work.
Yeah, that might be an interesting thing to fool around with. So
I have the 56 on I have a crop sensor Fuji, so the 56 works pretty good, similar to what the 85 will.
And you get a little bit more. I call it more reach, just because of the crop sensor. Yeah. It works.
It's a lot of fun to go out and play with it because I've done that on a couple of occasions, shooting those groups and trying to get it does work pretty good where you can isolate the subject fairly well. And about f4, it works pretty good for people anyways. It has for me. I was just curious. I was just looking for some insights on people that are specialized in portraits and stuff like that. So I just have to go to the website, I guess, and see.
Yeah, there are a few people who do more people. I can't think of their names right off, but within the Trailblazers, I'm sure there are several people, way more than I.
Especially with the Soul 45, I have that too, and that's sort of fun. There you don't have any aperture choice, you just shoot to what you got. So.
Yep, 3.5.
Interesting. Any other questions? Any questions from the group outside the attendees there? Boy, it's a quiet group, but you covered it well. It's really nice to get an overall view of what's all available from Lensbaby. I know they have a lot, and even though you can find a lot on their website, this sort of breaks it down nice and easy to understand. So
Yeah, you know, you don't have to switch screens and navigate and all of that. You just let
Yep.
me.
yep. I'll probably be going through this video a couple times.
Oh, well, like I said, any questions, feel free to reach out.
Yeah, definitely will. I'll make sure I put all that info on the video and that, so everybody can find it when they need it. So,
All right. Well, thank you so
Great.
much.
well, Jamie, thank you. I appreciate you coming and spending an hour or so with us and teaching us on Lensbabies. So,
Oh,
great.
enjoy the good weather today.
Yep. I think we all will. We'll all go out and start shooting some photos.
All right. Well, thanks so much.
Okay, thanks, Jamie.
Okay.
We'll see you. All right. Well, great. Anybody have any questions or things they want to talk about?
I have a compliment for Jeff here. You haven't cashed my check yet, Jeff.
Oh, I did, but it was just the other day. It was
all right.
sitting in a pile.
Okay.
Thank you very much for that.
Well,
I
you were-
really didn't expect it.
I bit off another bullet. I got a Mac Air coming to replace my MacBook Pro, my 2016 MacBook Pro. So I'll be challenged again once again to set it all up.
Yep. Yeah, I'm actually looking to do the same thing. So
I didn't want to do everything from scratch, but that was the way to do it. So
yeah.
so far.
Well, now that you have it on the one computer, you can actually transfer, if you wanted, all that data from that computer to the MacBook Air, and you could just do it that way instead of transferring from your MacBook Pro if it's an old one.
It's the 2016.
Yeah, that sounds like mine as well. I've got.
You won't get the latest update from Apple, and of course you can't get the latest Lightroom unless it's up.
Right.
System, so
Right.
I'm sort of forced to do that because that's the one I travel with. But I thought
Oh,
I'd try
okay.
the Air instead of I
Yep.
keep reading about everybody talking about the MacBook Pro. The Air is a good replacement for it. So
Yeah, it is. It's a lot lighter weight, easier to carry around. Steve, your audio is really low, just to let you know. We barely are hearing you.
oh really? I got a
Don't-
cat here in front of me for some reason.
Yeah, your cat maybe's blocking the microphone. I don't know.
Speak up more, I guess. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Any other questions? Comments? Boy, this is a tough group. I am researching Adobe's credit stuff for AI and all that, but I'm still in the process of trying to gather information. I'll maybe have something later on. They are changing a lot of their stuff quite a bit, so I do want to make sure that we can get all that straight. But yeah, it's. I noticed that they just raised my price, and it makes me start thinking. I was at $50-some a month to get the whole suite, and they just raised it to $79. And now I'm thinking what I want to do for all that stuff, because that's a pretty big price increase. Now I'm trying to find where I put
Anybody
upcoming
want to chat?
speakers. Let's see, scheduled topics. All right, so we got. I've been filling in. I still got some more dates to work on. I don't have anybody for September, so we may just end up talking about Photoshop, Lightroom, and different apps. Maybe Luminar Neo, because mine just renewed. In October, we'll have Hazel Meredith with Creativity with Your Smartphone. Doing that because Wacko is going to add a smartphone photography division in their competition. It will probably be set by the spring competition, and we're still in the process of creating the rules for the smartphone. I am thinking, and we're still tossing this around, and maybe it's something we can talk about here. I'm thinking that we should have it so that all the images are processed either on the smartphone or on an iPad, using the smartphone and iPad apps instead of being able to take it to your computer and process it. I know that's something that we're going to be talking about, but I saw in a lot of the rules that I researched that all the images were processed using, you know, the smartphone apps that are available. And I mean, there are a ton of apps available, but so we're working on that. Probably be for the spring competition. Not it's not going to be for the fall. We only have that one new division added. So I thought Hazel Meredith has some great stuff on smartphone photography. She just updated it. In November, I got Phil Itea talking about Fab 4, which is 4 ways that he likes to process his images. It's sort of an interesting sounding talk, so I've got him coming. I don't have anybody for December, and I've been working on a couple people for next year already. Can't believe I'm already starting to think of 2026, and we're only in August. But I may have somebody for September. I'm real close on 1 or 2 people, so, and I'm working on somebody for December as well. So, if nobody has anything else, I really don't have anything much prepared. We'll just end it early today, and everybody can get outside and enjoy the nice weather.
No fun mowing the yard, though. I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, I don't have to mow grass. Well, I mow grass at the thing. I did mention, if you heard, I mentioned that in Menominee Falls, we're having a Renaissance Fair the 8th and 9th of September, the weekend after Labor Day weekend. We're going to have jousting along with a whole ton of acts and about 40-50 vendors in the park. Entrance fee is $10 a person to come in, so it's not expensive. It's not, you know, crazy like Renaissance Fair has gotten down in Bristol, but we'll have a lot of interesting characters and good music, good food, and that. The following weekend, I think that's the 13th and 14th or 14th and 15th, something like that. We're having a Renaissance Fair Pirate Fest where it's all about pirates. So a couple of nice weekends here in the fall, Menominee Falls, where you can really get some nice, interesting people shots if you're looking to do people. So come and check us out. All the money we raise goes to taking care of the park. So something I'm deeply involved in. I want to keep this historical nature park going. And I moved out to Menominee Falls to get away from cutting grass, and I'm still cutting grass. I ended up cutting 10 hours this week, cutting the park's grass. So I traded one lawn for another. But it's a great historical park, and we want to keep it going. So, well, with that, I'll say, well, we'll see you next month. We'll see what it's going to be. I'm not sure what it's going to be in September, but we'll have something interesting for everybody. You'll get an email on it before we have the meeting.
I appreciate all your efforts. It's really nice. Take the time.
Well, thanks,
Thanks,
Steve. I
Jeff.
appreciate it. So, okay, we'll see you next month.